Join me in Habakkuk, however you pronounce that, uh, chapter 2. And here in a bit, we're going to go and we're going to talk about verse 14. But before that, we're going to venture into, some of the chapter 2, like what was written before verse 14. And so Habakkuk, or however you want to pronounce that, chapter 2, verse 3 says this vision is for a future time. It describes the end and will be fulfilled. So let me stop right there. Right there, right in verse 3. Like, you see that this is a prophecy that is going to be fulfilled for a, for a future time, a future generation. So let me just say, like, how long does it take for prophecies to be fulfilled? Sometimes it takes a long time for a prophecy to be fulfilled. Right in verse 3, it says that this prophecy is for the future. It is, it describes the end and will be fulfilled. So it describes the end. So this prophecy, you can see it's talking about the end times prophecy. It's talking about the Revelation prophecy, the, the end of all things. So this, I don't know exactly when this would have been written, but it would have been written many years before Jesus, came. This would have been written, I don't know how many hundreds of years, but before Jesus, but we know that if it was written before Jesus, it was written longer than 2,000. So this is like a nearly a 3,000 year old prophecy. Maybe not that old, but you get the idea. You get the point. Like, this prophecy has not been fulfilled yet. And so, how long does it take for a prophecy to be fulfilled? Well, maybe 3,000, maybe 4,000 years. Some people like to think that when they hear a prophetic word, that it's going to be fulfilled, in the coming 5, 10, 20, 50 years. But that's not always so. Some prophetic words are, but typically the prophetic words that would, be fulfilled, like, it's hard to say really what, prophecies are fulfilled within 10, 20, 30, 50 years, in which prophecies, take longer. But one thing that I will say is, typically when people start getting a prophetic word and then they, you know, they get a prophetic word, and then there's time that goes by before somebody else gets the same prophetic word, or a prophetic word that has something to do with the previous prophetic word. Usually that means it's taking some time, the prophecy is taking some time to get here. Typically, when one person gives a prophetic word, and then the very next day they give another prophetic word, and the next day they give another, and so on and so forth, and all those prophetic words, have something to do, like they're all meant for the same thing. Well, that's a good indicator. And I'm not saying that that happens all the time, but that is a good indicator that a prophetic word is getting close. And so you see, this word, this prophetic word was written, now, obviously not exactly, well, it could have been written 3,000 years. I'm not, in that type of field. I don't really know. I'm pretty sure it's really easy research that somebody can do to figure out, how many years this prophetic word was written. I just haven't done that research. I'm not going to, I'm doing other research right now. I'm researching, trying to, figure out where, Noah and his family would have came from, what part of the world they would have, came from, and things like that. So I'm doing other, so this video is kind of like a side video right now. So I'm not gonna, so therefore, I don't know. But I can guarantee you someone can do the research and find out just exactly when this prophecy was. But I can tell you it's probably nearly 3,000 years ago. That would have been, somewhere between 2,500 years to 3,000 years ago, somewhere in that timeline. I can guarantee it. And it's not fulfilled yet. However, fast forward today, if you're somebody that pays attention to prophetic words, there's a lot of prophetic words on social media these days, and you can go on and listen to all the prophetic words. Well, long story short, that's kind of what I've done. And so, long story short, a lot of those, and I don't know if the person giving the prophetic word realizes it or not, but I found something, and for short, I found something that I believe is that their prophetic words on social media could be something to do with either the new heaven and new earth coming, which would be after Jesus's, second coming, or possibly have something to do with the 1,000 years of peace. When you read Revelation 20, the first part of 20, it talks about a time span of, a time period of peace here on earth. And that is when Satan will be locked up. He will take his, the punishment that is not the, it's not the punishment. This is just the precursor. And I said in many videos that you have precursors to certain things. God's interesting. He always gives a so even his birth, his very first coming, was just a precursor. It was to set the stage, get everything ready for his, second coming. So even if we look back at his first coming, it's a precursor. And so there's a lot of things in scripture that you can look at and find that is actually a precursor to, what the new heaven and new earth is going to be like. For example, you can go back to the time that Adam and Eve were in the garden before sin, and that's just a precursor to the new heaven and new earth. And so, and then there's other things like that. And so going back to what I found is, it's possible. Now, yeah, it's possible that part of their prophecies, people might see part of those prophecies being fulfilled, as we speak, right? However, I do, get a sense, from, what I've been observing through those prophecies, is it actually sounds like they actually could, like, again, if they are aware of it or not, it could be that they're also prophesying one of two things, if not, the 1,000 years of peace and the new heaven and new earth. So I just wanted to say that just real quick, because there's a lot of those prophecies. And so we are in an era, I want you to recognize that we are in an era where there's a lot of prophecies about the second coming of Jesus. And so that kind of hints that we are, getting a lot closer, and maybe closer than you or I realize. And so I just wanted to, spend a little time, talking about that, but however, just remember, this prophecy was almost 3,000 years ago. But yeah, fast forward to today, there is quite a bit of prophecies. And so we could be just getting close. So getting that out of the way, obviously we can see that this hasn't necessarily been fulfilled yet. And so jumping to 14, it says, "For as the waters fill the sea, the earth will be filled with an awareness of the glory of the Lord." So what that is talking about in 14 is that it sounds like it's talking about the 1,000 years of peace. You know, because if you take this prophecy and you match it up with Isaiah 60, Isaiah chapter 60 talks about there being peace on earth. That prophecy has not been fulfilled yet. We have not seen 1,000 years of peace here on earth. We have not seen a earth that has no war. That's all we've seen is a world full of war, and we have not came to that 1,000 years of peace. And so Isaiah 60 has not yet been fulfilled, and Habakkuk, however you pronounce that, 14 also has not been fulfilled. And those are going to be fulfilled before the Lord's coming. Now, are those things going to be fulfilled and then boom, the Lord, like, no. Because these prophecies can only be fulfilled when Satan takes his punishment, his precursor punishment, his punishment before his final punishment. Satan has not taken his first punishment, the punishment that is the precursor to his final punishment, is him getting thrown in the bottomless pit. Well, what happens after he gets thrown into the bottomless pit? We go into 1,000 years of peace on earth. On earth, we go through a period of 1,000 years of no war, of putting down our pitchforks, right? So then what happens after the 1,000 years? What does Scripture tell us? Does Jesus come back after the 1,000 years? No, that's not what we find. What we find is that when we get down to Revelation chapter 20, verse 7, Satan is released. So he takes 1,000 years of punishment, and then he gets released into the world again. And what does he do? He deceives the world once more before the final return. So therefore, no wonder why Jesus says there will be war and rumors of war. There will be birth pains. The world will go through birth pains and such. But not to be alarmed. There's a reason for that. It's because Babylon will fall, but Babylon's fall is just Babylon's fall is the same as Satan's punishment. See, Babylon's fall, the great city of Babylon, is the precursor. That's what is going to happen before the world falls. And I do have videos explaining to you the city of Babylon. How the city of Babylon the scarlet beast and the prostitute woman, all in Revelation chapter 17, is three persons, one Antichrist system. So it would be a system that does not like Christians. And so it would be a system that that's not allowing Christians to be the head of the system. Obviously, we can see there's multiple beliefs like the evolution, people that believe in evolution, their beliefs would be kind of like those types of scientists are basically the head of what, that's the belief of what the world believes. And the Christian point of view, the 6-day creation point of view, would be kind of at the tail end, where, like you can see, not many people believe in the 6-day creation. So it's not necessarily that this Antichrist system says that Christians can't exist. It's the Antichrist system says that we can exist as long as we stay at the tail and not the head. Well, what is going to happen when the great city of Babylon falls? When the great city of Babylon falls, it's going to become easier for Christians to, tell people about the gospel, tell people about 6-day creation, and it's going to slowly take a shift. When Babylon falls, the world is slowly going to take a shift to where now Christians are not any longer the tail of this world, but the head of this world. Like the 6-day creation belief will go from being the tail of this world to the head of this world once the great city of Babylon falls. But then you can expect that after that, when Satan is released from his 1,000-year punishment, because he's released, he's going to deceive the world all over again. So therefore, the Christian 6-day creation belief, probably you can expect that to go back down to the tail. And because it's the fall of Babylon is the precursor. Then, so moving, and we don't know how much longer, after that, but once the world is, deceived once more, sometime after that, then the return of Jesus and the new heaven and new earth. So, that prophecy we now know is part of the 1,000 years of peace that is to come, that is prophesied from the book of Revelation. And that's simply all I wanted to talk to you guys about today. I hope you liked this video. Hit the thumbs up, share if you liked it, and hope to see you in the next one.